When people talk about old age, they talk about rest, they talk about peace, they talk about finally slowing down. No one ever warned me about the silence. I remember the first evening I noticed it. The sun was setting just like it always had. The walls of the house were the same. The furniture had not moved, but something was missing. I stood in the kitchen holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. I was not waiting for anyone, and that was the part that hurt the most. For years, my life had been built around waiting for my children to come home, waiting for footsteps, waiting for voices, waiting for someone to say, "Ami, I'm back." That evening, there was nothing to wait for. I sat down at the dining table, the same table where I had once served warm food with tired hands, the same table where laughter used to spill like water. Now, there was only one plate. I ate slowly, not because I was enjoying the food, but because there was no rush. No one was coming late. No one needed more rice. No one asked me to sit and eat with them. When I finished, I washed the dishes alone. The sound of water felt louder than it should have. Every clink of the plate echoed in my chest. That night, when I lay down to sleep, I realized something painful. Old age does not arrive loudly. It comes quietly, like a door closing that no one notices. And by the time you understand what has happened, you are already alone inside the house you once filled with love. I was not always alone. Once this house was full. Not perfect, not peaceful every day, but alive. I raised 3 children here, 2 sons and a daughter. Their school bags were always thrown somewhere they didn't belong. Their voices filled the rooms from morning until night. Their father worked long hours. He was a quiet man. He believed providing was his way of loving. So most of the time, it was just me and the children. I cooked, I cleaned, I listened. I learned early that mothers are not supposed to be tired. We are not supposed to complain. So even when my back hurt, I stood longer. Even when my heart felt heavy, I smiled wider. Because that is what good mothers do. At least, that is what I believed. When my children grew older, one by one, they left. First for college, then for work, then for marriage. Each time, I told myself the same thing. This is life. This is how it should be. I cried quietly, never in front of them. My daughter married first. She moved to another city. She called often in the beginning. Long conversations, laughter, then life happened. Her calls became shorter, then less frequent. My younger son married next. He stayed in the same city, but not the same house. At first, he visited every weekend, then every month. My elder son lived with me the longest. After his father passed away, it was just the 2 of us. I leaned on him without meaning to. He leaned on me without realizing it. When he married, I told myself I was happy for him. And I was. My daughter-in-law came into the house with new habits, new ways of doing things. She was not unkind, just different. At first, I tried to help. I offered advice. I stepped in without being asked. I didn't know yet that love, when it lingers too long, can begin to feel like control. Slowly, I learned to step back. I ate quietly. I spoke less. I thought silence would keep the peace. I did not know silence would train everyone to forget me. It did not happen suddenly. Loneliness never does. It grows quietly, like dust in the corners of a room you no longer check. At first, it was small things I told myself did not matter. Dinner would be cooked without asking me. I would walk into the kitchen and smell spices already mixed, oil already hot. I would pause for a second, then smile. "It smells nice," I would say. My daughter-in-law would nod, polite but busy. My son would be on his phone. No one noticed that I had stopped cooking. At first, I felt relief. My hands were tired, my knees hurt when I stood too long. But slowly, relief turned into something else, something heavy. I began to feel unnecessary. I started eating earlier or later than them, not because anyone asked me to, just because it felt easier. When they sat together at the table, talking about work, plans, people I did not know, I felt like a guest in my own house. Sometimes I tried to join the conversation. I would say something small. "Do you remember when?" But my words would fall between their sentences, unnoticed. So I stopped trying. I learned to listen quietly. I learned to smile at the right moments. Silence became my habit. One afternoon, I was folding laundry in my room when I heard them talking in the living room. They were discussing a short trip. Just 2 days. I waited for my name to appear in the conversation. It didn't. Later, I asked gently, "You're going somewhere?" My son looked surprised. "Oh, yes, just a short break." I nodded. "That's nice." He hesitated, then said, "We've already booked everything." I smiled again. I always smiled. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. The ceiling fan made its slow, tired sound. I stared into the dark and tried to understand why something so small hurt so much. I told myself I was being selfish. They were young. They deserved space. Still, a quiet question stayed with me. When did I stop belonging? After that, the house felt different. Not cold, just distant. My daughter-in-law began rearranging things, cupboards, shelves, the living room. She did not ask me. She did not need to. I watched my memories move into boxes, old utensils, photographs, things I once used every day. "Where should I keep this?" she asked once, holding an old steel bowl. I looked at it. I had used that bowl for years. "Anywhere," I said. She placed it in a high cupboard. I could no longer reach it. Small moments like this stacked up quietly. One evening, my son came home late. He looked tired. I warmed his food without being asked. When I placed the plate in front of him, he paused. "You didn't have to," he said. His voice was not unkind, just firm. I stepped back. "Oh, okay." I went to my room and sat on the bed. My hands felt empty. From that day, I stopped doing things unless I was asked. But no one asked. Days passed like that. Calm on the outside, heavy on the inside. Then my health began to slow me down. Nothing serious, just age. My knees hurt more often. My eyes tired quickly. Some mornings, getting out of bed felt like lifting a heavy weight. Once, I felt dizzy while standing in the kitchen. I held the counter until the room settled. My daughter-in-law noticed. She said, "You should rest more." I nodded, but rest feels different when you are alone. I began spending more time in my room, not because I wanted to hide, but because there was no place for me elsewhere. The television in the living room always seemed to belong to someone else. The kitchen was no longer mine. The conversations did not include me. My room became my world. I kept it clean. Too clean. I folded my blankets carefully. I lined my shoes neatly. I placed my medicines in a row on the small table. Sometimes I sat by the window and watched the street. Children playing, mothers calling them inside. I wondered if those mothers knew how fast time moves, how suddenly the house goes quiet. One afternoon, my daughter called. "How are you, Ami?" she asked. "I'm fine," I said. I always said that. She talked about her children, her busy life. I listened. When the call ended, I held the phone for a long time. Then I placed it back on the table. The silence returned immediately. A few weeks later, my younger son visited. He stayed for tea. He looked around and said, "You look thinner." I laughed lightly. "Old age?" I said. He nodded, uncomfortable. Then he checked the time. When he left, the house felt even quieter than before. That night, I cried softly into my pillow. Not because anyone was cruel, but because no one noticed. The hardest kind of pain is the one that has no villain. Then came the day that changed everything. It was an ordinary morning. I woke early, as always. I made tea for myself and sat near the window. My daughter-in-law was on the phone, speaking in a low voice. I was not trying to listen, but the house was quiet. "I don't know how long this can continue," she said. Her voice was tired. I froze. My name was not spoken, but I knew. "She needs care," she continued, "and we both work. It's becoming difficult." There was a pause, then, "I'm not saying this out of disrespect. I'm just being practical." I sat very still. Practical. That word stayed with me. Later that day, my son came to my room. He stood near the door, not sitting down. "Ami," he said gently. "Yes?" He took a breath. "We need to talk about something." I nodded. He spoke slowly. about work pressure, about space, about arrangements. He did not say the words directly, but I understood. He suggested that I might be more comfortable staying with my daughter for a while. Just for some time. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, he looked at me carefully, as if checking whether I would break. I smiled. "Of course," I said. "Whatever is easier." Relief crossed his face. He thanked me. Then he left the room. I sat there alone. I did not cry. Not then. I looked around the room. The bed, the cupboard, the small table with my medicines. This room had slowly become my entire life. And now, even this felt temporary. That evening, I packed quietly. Not much to pack. Old age teaches you to live lightly. A few clothes, my medicines, a small photo of my children when they were young. I folded everything carefully. When I was done, I sat on the bed and waited. Dinner was eaten without me that night. No one noticed. Later, my daughter-in-law knocked lightly. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She nodded and left. The door closed softly. I lay down and stared at the ceiling. The fan turned slowly above me. I thought about all the years I had lived in this house. All the meals, all the prayers, all the waiting. No one had prepared me for this part of old age. Not the weakness, not the illness, but the feeling of becoming a problem. The morning I was supposed to leave arrived quietly. No announcements, no rush. The house woke up like it always did. The same sounds, the same routine. I woke before everyone else. Old habits do not disappear easily. I folded my blanket neatly and placed it at the corner of the bed. I washed my face slowly, looking at myself in the mirror longer than usual. My hair had turned almost completely white. My face had lines I did not remember earning. I looked older than I felt. Or maybe I felt older than I wanted to admit. I dressed carefully. Simple clothes, comfortable. I wanted to look neat. Not because anyone expected it, but because dignity matters when everything else feels fragile. I sat on the bed and waited. When the house finally stirred, I heard the familiar sounds. Doors opening, footsteps, the kitchen coming alive. No one came to my room. After some time, I picked up my small bag and stepped out. My daughter-in-law was in the kitchen. She looked up, surprised. "Oh, you're ready already?" "Yes," I said. She nodded. "Tea?" "No, thank you." She hesitated, then turned back to the stove. I stood there for a moment, unsure of where to go, so I sat on the edge of the sofa. The living room felt unfamiliar, as if I was visiting. My son came out, adjusting his watch. "Ami," he said, "we'll leave in a bit." I nodded. We sat in silence. I watched the clock on the wall. Its ticking sounded louder than it should have. Then something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang. We all looked at each other, confused. My daughter-in-law wiped her hands and opened the door. It was my younger son. He looked surprised to see me with a bag. "What's going on?" he asked. No one answered immediately. My elder son spoke first. "Ami is going to stay with your sister for some time." My younger son frowned. "Why?" There was a pause. "She needs more care," my daughter-in-law said carefully. "And with our work, it's difficult." My younger son looked at me, then back at them. "She looks fine," he said. I smiled weakly. "I am fine." But my voice did not sound convincing, even to me. He sat down heavily. "Did anyone ask her what she wants?" The room went quiet. My elder son looked uncomfortable. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. "We're just trying to manage things," she said. My younger son shook his head. "This is her house." No one responded. I felt something stir inside me. Not anger, just a deep tiredness. I spoke softly. "It's okay. I don't want to be a burden." The word escaped before I could stop it. Burden. As soon as I said it, I wished I hadn't. My younger son looked at me sharply. "Ami, don't say that." My elder son stared at the floor. My daughter-in-law sighed. "No one is calling you a burden." But no one corrected me either. That was when something inside me finally broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. I realized that I had been slowly erasing myself for years, so others would feel comfortable. I had mistaken silence for patience, and patience for love. I sat down slowly. "I want to say something," I said. My voice was calm, steadier than I expected. Everyone looked at me. "I have spent my whole life taking care of others," I said. "I did it gladly. I never kept count." I paused. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to take care of myself. No one spoke. I stopped saying when something hurt. I stopped saying when I felt lonely, because I thought that was the right thing to do. My daughter-in-law looked away. "I don't want to be in the way," I continued, "but I also don't want to disappear quietly." My hands trembled slightly. I held them together. "This house holds my memories, my husband's memories, my children's childhood." I looked at my elder son. "I am not asking for control. I am not asking to be obeyed." My voice softened. "I am only asking to belong." The room felt heavy. My younger son's eyes filled with tears. My elder son swallowed hard. My daughter-in-law shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't realize you felt this way," my elder son said finally. I nodded. "That's the problem. I stopped letting you see." There was a long silence. Then my daughter-in-law spoke. "We didn't mean to hurt you." Her voice was quieter now. "I know," I said. And I did. That was the strange part. They were not cruel people, just busy, just overwhelmed, but intentions do not erase impact. My younger son stood up. "No one is going anywhere today." My elder son looked at him. "We already talked about—" "No," he said firmly. "We need to talk properly." I watched them argue softly, not shouting, just tired words. For the first time, they were talking about me as a person, not a problem to solve. I sat there, exhausted, not from age, from holding too much for too long. Finally, my elder son turned to me. "Ami," he said, "stay. We'll figure something out." I searched his face. For years, I had waited for him to say something like that. And now that he had, I felt strangely empty. "I don't want promises," I said gently. "I want honesty." He nodded. "I don't know how to balance everything," he admitted. That honesty mattered more than comfort. I picked up my bag and placed it beside the sofa. "I will stay," I said, but not silently. That was the turning point. Not because everything changed that day, but because I did. That evening we ate together. Awkwardly, quietly, but together. I noticed small things. My daughter-in-law asked me where I kept the spices. My elder son asked if I needed anything. These were small gestures, but they felt different now, because I was no longer invisible. That night, as I lay in my bed, I felt something unfamiliar. Not happiness, but dignity. For the first time in a long while, I had spoken without apologizing. And that changed everything. The days after that conversation moved slowly. Not heavy, just careful. It felt like everyone in the house was walking on a floor they had just noticed was fragile. No one said much at first, and strangely, that was okay. I stayed. My bag remained in the corner of the living room for a few days. No one asked me to unpack it. No one asked me to leave. Eventually, one morning, I picked it up and placed it back in my cupboard. Quietly, like a decision made inside the heart before the mind catches up. Life did not change overnight. There were no sudden hugs, no dramatic apologies. Instead, there were small shifts. My daughter-in-law began asking me simple things. "Do you want tea now or later? Can you show me how you make that lentil dish?" At first, I answered cautiously, as if these questions might disappear again if I trusted them too much. But slowly, I allowed myself to respond fully, not just with words, with presence. One afternoon, I sat in the kitchen while she cooked, not to help, just to sit. She talked about her work, her tiredness, her fear of not doing enough. I listened, and I realized something important. She was not pushing me away because she disliked me. She was overwhelmed and did not know how to make space for everyone. That did not erase the pain, but it softened it. My elder son began checking in more often. Are your knees hurting today? Did you take your medicine? These were small questions, but they felt like hands reaching out. Once I answered honestly, yes, they hurt. He looked surprised, then concerned. I didn't know. I didn't tell you, I said gently. He nodded slowly. We were both learning. The house began to feel less divided. I started eating at the table again, sometimes silently, sometimes with light conversation. I did not force myself into discussions, and I did not erase myself either. If I had something to say, I said it. If I didn't, I rested in the quiet without guilt. One evening, my younger son came again. He stayed longer this time. We drank tea together, all of us. He looked around and smiled faintly. This feels better, he said. No one disagreed. That night, when everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room. Not because I felt lonely, but because I wanted to think. I thought about all the years I had mistaken being needed for being loved, how I had slowly made myself smaller so others would feel comfortable. I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. Love does not require disappearance. In the weeks that followed, I made changes too. I stopped waiting silently. If I felt unwell, I said so. If I wanted company, I asked. At first, my voice trembled when I did. Old habits resist change, but each time I spoke, it became easier. One afternoon, I told my daughter-in-law, I feel lonely during the day. She looked at me, startled. I didn't know, she said. I know, I replied, but I'm telling you now. She nodded slowly. The next day, she suggested we walk together in the evening. It was awkward at first. Two women learning how to exist together without competition, but as we walked side by side, something loosened. We talked about small things, the weather, the street, the neighbors. And then, unexpectedly, she said, I was scared I wouldn't be a good daughter-in-law. I looked at her. I was scared I wasn't a good mother anymore, I said. We both laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was true. Slowly, trust grew. Not the loud kind, the quiet, steady kind. My elder son began involving me in decisions again. Not out of duty, but consideration. What do you think? He would ask. Sometimes I said, do what feels right. Other times, I shared my thoughts. And when I did, they listened. There were still difficult days. Days when my body felt heavy. Days when old fears returned. Sometimes I still felt like I was in the way. But now, when those thoughts came, I spoke them aloud. I'm feeling a bit lost today, I would say. And someone would respond. That made all the difference. One morning, I found my daughter-in-law cleaning out the cupboard. She held up the old steel bowl. I moved this back down, she said. I know you use it. I took it from her hands. My fingers remembered it instantly. Thank you, I said. She smiled. It was a small thing, but it felt like being seen. Months passed, not perfectly, but honestly. I no longer measured my worth by how invisible I could be. I measured it by how present I allowed myself to be. One day, my daughter called again. How are you really, Amy? She asked. This time, I answered differently. I'm learning, I said, to take up space. She was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you, she said. That night, I slept deeply, not because life was easy, but because my heart was lighter. Old age did not suddenly become joyful. My body still ached. The future was still uncertain, but the loneliness had changed. It was no longer a punishment. It was a signal, a reminder to speak, to ask, to stay visible. One evening, as we sat together after dinner, my elder son said quietly, I'm glad you stayed. I looked at him. So am I replied. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. The house still had quiet moments, but they were no longer empty. They were shared, and that was enough. Today, my life is quieter. Not empty, just calmer. I wake up early, like I always have. I make my tea slowly and sit near the window. The street looks the same, but I do not feel the same inside. I no longer confuse silence with love. And I no longer believe that being strong means being invisible. Old age has taught me many things. it has taken some things away too. My body is slower. My steps are careful. Some days my hands shake when I hold my cup. But my voice is steadier now. I speak when something hurts. I speak when something matters. And when I am quiet, it is because I choose to be. I look at my children differently now, not as people who owe me, but as people still learning, just like I am. They are not perfect. Neither was I. But we are trying. Sometimes my daughter-in-law sits with me in the evening. We do not always talk. Sometimes we just watch the sky change colors. That quiet feels kind. Not like before. I still miss the past. The noise, the busyness, the feeling of being needed every moment. But I understand now that being needed is not the same as being loved. Love is being seen, even when you are no longer useful, even when you move slowly. If there is one thing I wish I had known earlier, it is this. Do not disappear for the comfort of others. Do not shrink yourself to keep the peace. Your presence is not a burden, and old age should not feel like a punishment. It is simply another season, one that asks for honesty more than strength. When night comes, I lie in my bed and listen to the house. The soft sounds, the distant footsteps, the doors closing gently. I am not afraid of the quiet anymore, because I know I belong here. And if you are listening to my story, sitting somewhere in your own silence, I want you to know this. You matter. Your voice matters. Your place matters. No one prepared me for how lonely old age could feel, but I am preparing myself now, with truth, with dignity, and with the quiet courage to stay.